So it's 8:30 and I'll just welcome the people that are here, and there'll be other people joining us, obviously. And I'll provide kind of an overview of the agenda first, and then do updates. And I want to thank everybody who's here, um, from all over the state, which it's always really good to see people. And we have people from USBE as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the overview. So there will be kind of a range of updates to better support every single LEA in providing professional learning for all of their educators and administrators. So I'll do an overview of that. At 9 o'clock, we'll have Megan, who's here with us, and she'll talk a little bit about updating on WIDA. Then we have a special treat at 9:30. Cache County, they've done some really interesting work in competency-based ESL endorsements, and we'll have two teachers, and Melinda will kind of introduce them. And one of the reasons this is important is the ESL competency-based endorsements have made a significant difference in the equity labs that Holly Bell and other colleagues did last year, showed that there's an increase in students learning English based on teachers who have an ESL endorsement. And this is the first time that this has happened, which is pretty impressive. Um, so thanks, Holly. Um, and the reason this is important is the idea that professional learning doesn't really happen through like one-time hit or miss experiences, but really sustained work in the classroom that ends up being focused on adjusted instruction related to the way in which educators, principals, staff members, everybody creates a culture of acceptance and welcoming to the school community so that we're all learning together. So this makes a huge difference in the way in which teachers' professional learning really supports the work that they're doing in their classrooms with their students instead of something that's abstract. Um, on the Title III page, we actually have the standards and the criteria for a competency-based endorsement. Yesterday, I was at Utah International Charter School and saw a portfolio exhibition from a teacher presenting the work that they were doing with their students at Utah International Charter School, which I think all of us know really focuses on pretty much refugee students, but everybody is welcome. And the teacher's final exhibition was incredible because, again, and this is from she's an English language arts teacher. The other portfolio exhibition I saw was from a biology teacher. And the way in which differentiated instruction happens at this school is so important. Um, and I'm still trying to figure out how we can move people toward understanding what differentiation actually looks like. Um, I have AI keep asking me about summaries. I think summaries are okay. I'm not a big fan of AI. Um, I use it all the time. Um, and the reason I use it is I trick it. And oftentimes it'll say, can you change the subject? Because AI is only as good as the way in which it's programmed. So which is fine. I don't have any other objections to it, um, because I think it's an important tool. Uh, so we're going to have this at 9:30 after Megan. We're going to have two educators who are going to talk about their experiences in a competency-based ESL endorsement program. On the Title III webpage, there are summaries and the criteria for getting an approval. And there'll be a list pretty soon, I think, before June, of all the districts and charter schools that have approved competency-based programs so that you can better, collaborate with each other and learn with and from each other and what makes a difference in adjusted instruction and the way adults learn together instead of, isolated in their classrooms with their doors closed. So the exhibition that I saw, the portfolio exhibition that I saw yesterday was really impressive. And it was in an English language arts high school class at Utah International. The previous one that I saw was in biology, which was a ninth grade biology, and it was extraordinary as well, related to differentiation. So these are all these, wonderful, powerful examples of what adult learning does and how that changes what happens for students in the classroom, whether you're an English learner or a student with diverse needs, neurodiverse students. It makes a big difference to be more responsive and to create those relationships with students and families. So we'll be hearing from Cache County's ESL endorsement program. We're also going to, which I think is really important, is the promising practices. The reason the ALS meetings focus on promising practices is if we're not really learning from each other and with each other across the state, then we're missing a really important opportunity. I think some people have the idea that we should be learning from people who aren't in the state, which for me ends up being a little problematic. Um, you might have contractors come in and they've never worked with refugee students, but yet they're sent to a school that has a majority of refugee students. So this doesn't really help us. Uh, if we actually learn from each other and create the collaborative network within Utah, then it ends up being, more logical that the context of Utah and the students that we're working with, this is over 165 languages, we're better able to meet the needs of those students and share those promising practices. So the promising practices we're going to hear from today is from Provo, and it's Tiffany Evans. So I'm going to welcome Tiffany when we get to that point. And usually Michelle Eldridge is over the work that happens in Provo. And the reason this is important is that, and this goes back to the kind of the updates I'm going to provide for you on funding. If we're not evaluating program effectiveness, which if you look at the previous Department of Justice letter, one of the 10 indicators is evaluating program effectiveness. That's our responsibility. And if we contract out, and whether it's a software program or whatever it happens to be, and it's not producing results, then there's no reason to think that they're fulfilling their contractual obligations at all. And so from my viewpoint, this is a bandwagon I've been on for quite a while. If the programs that you're contracting out don't make a difference, then why do you keep spending money on them? Right? It's not logical. So Provo has done a really great job of evaluating program effectiveness, and it's been very clear with contractors or programmatic people and saying, this isn't meeting our needs and we're going to make different choices. So we're going to hear from them about how they have done that. I have also done that with certain contractors in digital teaching and learning. We're also going to hear from Connie from Davis in really helping families and communities and educators be more aware of refugee. It's kind of a refugee awareness. And, you know, they do a great job of this. I visited their schools this last couple of months and had a great experience with Connie and Sue. And one of the schools I went to, there was a Ukrainian family that came, and the refinery that's in the north part of Salt Lake has monthly sirens for emergency, it's kind of like drills. And so when this actually happened, the question ends up being from Ukrainian families, well, what happens when your school gets bombed? Now, the reason they're saying that is because when they were in the Ukraine, before they came and during the war, um, their children's school was bombed and they couldn't really find their children until the rescue workers came. So, and I'm giving you that as a concrete example um, of the kind of opportunity we have to be more conscious of the way in which the experiences of families, whether they're refugees or, they've grown up in Utah, to better understand the way in which schools create safe environments, if in fact the school is a welcoming place and we actually learn from children and families. So this piece is really an important thing. And, Davis has done a really great job and they'll share their refugee awareness um, and what they're actually doing with that. And then at the end, we'll have my wonderful colleagues from Utah Voices of Children reviewing some of the legislation that will impact us directly. I think this is really an important piece um, because it's from another source. It's from a community-based organization that focuses on policy development in relationship to what will make a difference for students and their families. So that's the overview. And I'm going to just do a really brief thank you. And it's not really a farewell. Robin Williams has been, a colleague, a mentor, an advocate, a strong voice for those students who need to be heard in their families. She's done amazing work. So Robin is going to head off into the sunset, into, I don't know, Robin, you want to say something about your new adventure? Would be really great.
I'm going to go live out the dream on a little farm that's very close to 300 peaks that are over 13,000 feet. And so I'm going to climb all the mountains and garden when I'm resting.
Thanks, Robin. And her replacement, I'm not going to announce it, but I've worked with him, I think, for over 20 years. So it'll be great to reconnect with him and try to continue the great work that Robin has done in Murray. And I don't know if Dave is here, if Dave Gomez is here. Um, I'm not sure if he is or not. Um, but he's also going to retire into the sunset. He's been a huge advocate and has done amazing work with Granite School District and other places that he's been. And his father, most of you know or don't know, really worked at USBE for quite a while in working on issues of inclusion and diversity. And the reason, that's important, and I'll just say this, I'll go back to the ESL competency-based endorsement. And I don't know if anybody's here from Granite, and maybe Michelle knows Loveday from Jordan. But the principal at Cypress, I think it's Cypress, uh, is really fabulous. And the entire faculty at Cypress High School is doing the ESL competency-based endorsement. Now, this is a high school. So, you know, I'm giving you some ideas about the way in which the work that you all have done has made a significant difference in the way in which teachers, educators, principals, administrators are, becoming more and more responsive to uh, students and their needs and the needs of families. So, we should be very proud of this and not intimidated by, kind of any kind of chaotic experiences that are happening over the country. So, I'm just saying, um, and I have had experiences with this. And so, you know, I'm just saying this for my younger colleagues. I'm kind of like a porcupine and an armadillo. So most things just rub up, just roll off my back, and I just dig in because I have colleagues in Utah who really care about children. And so that makes a difference for me. Uh, so now we're going to get to finances. So people have been stressed out about this, and I obviously understand why. So far, there are no preliminary allocations at all for title programs. We don't really know what's going to happen. Now, the reason I'm saying this, there is something that's been worked on, which is a pre-application for federal funds. So they actually, the finance department ended up using the previous fiscal year title funds to create a pilot so that LEAs can better understand transferability across federal title programs. Now they're doing this, and I think, it's a really good move. Um, Fortunately or unfortunately, we're not sure that we're even going to have title funds. I've heard that the move is to take all the title funds and send them back to the states in a block grant for vouchers, which if you've been, following Supreme Court case in Utah, that vouchers have from this particular Supreme Court, the Utah Supreme Court, uh, violates the Utah Constitution. So all these court cases are coming up, and so we don't really know what's going to happen. But my goal for you is to really focus on, making sure that whatever happens, that we put the needs of students and their families first. That's what advocacy looks like. So just so you're clear, the transferability based on fund the title programs. Uh, so Title IV and Title II can be transferred into Title III. And there are other issues around Title I, and you'll find after the pilot program is over, our finance department will do a really good job of, helping people better understand how those funds can be used and how they could be transferred. And the reason this is important is last year, the House of Representatives cut Title III funds for whatever reason. But if you have Title II and Title IV funds, and your district, uh, actually has a really collaborative culture, so that people in charge of those Title II and Title IV funds, the way in which Title III people can work with them to help them better work with the kinds of evaluation processes that would reallocate funds so that students learning English have equitable access to high quality instruction. So um, that's an overview. The positive things that I'm going to say is that by June, there'll be over 100 USBE certified interpreters through the level 1 certification. The advanced 40-hour certification, there are 50 that are enrolled and almost 100 on the wait list. And so the amendment to the contract is going through the finance department so that uh, within the next 5 years, there will be, I mean, the hope is that we'll have over 500 advanced certifications, and then all the districts will be able to provide their own. And the reason I'm saying this is that all the courses that we have uh, on the Title III webpage, I'm now converting them uh, so that everyone will have access and they will be transferred into uh, the Canvas Commons. So all the TESOL courses that I developed for SUU with a group of wonderful colleagues, um, and the civil rights and the teaching, writing, the ebooks on compassion, developing compassion. So all those, I think it's about 10, 10 or 12 courses will be in the Canvas Commons with all the resources so that any LEA can actually use those um, for their online courses to support the work that you're doing that's directly connected to the way in which instruction, quality instruction happens for a wide range of students. So I'm going to stop for a minute to see if anybody would like to say anything or raise their hand. Um, I know people have been putting a lot of things in the chat. Um, so feel free to unmute and say whatever you'd like, or ask any questions about the updates for funding, even though we don't really know anything about funding. I'll pause for a minute.
So to clarify then, with the funding, excuse me, with the funding we received for 24 to 26, that currently is in the account, so we can use into next year. We just don't know about fiscal year 25. So that money is available. We can still plan on spending that.
Well, let me tell you why I'm concerned. And thank you for bringing this up, Michelle. The money that's been allocated, we don't have it. It's in the Treasury. The only way we end up having funds, and USBE does a drawdown and the funds come to us, if every single um, grantee sends in reimbursements every quarter. Now, I'm saying this to be really clear. If your business administrator is not sending reimbursements for Title III funds, USBE doesn't have it. We don't have it. It's in the Treasury. So the problem with that is because things are so chaotic, we don't do the drawdown unless the districts, the grantees, send in reimbursements. That's the only way Utah gets money from the United States Treasury. So that means that every single LEA that is a grantee for whether it's immigrant funds or Title III funds or even Title I funds, all the title funds, if your business administrator is not sending in reimbursements, that money isn't in Utah. So you see my point.
Which Christelle, people who have access to Utah grants, you can look yourself. I mean, basically, when I just popped open mine, I looked at money available to, and if it has the entire amount there, that means they have not done a reimbursement yet. You actually can go further in to see if they've done a partial reimbursement, what they've done with that. My business administrator in Murray is one of those that made a huge habit out of just doing it like once a year. And it took me talking with him and my superintendent to just say, you have to start doing it. And so I just looked, and it does look like he's been abiding by that. So again, if you are the person who writes in Utah or in Utah grants, you can pop that open and look at what your remaining financials are, and then you actually can go in and see what requests they've made against that. And if you've got the entire amount still sitting there, I would get after your business administrator and whomever else can help you make sure that they do it differently.
Robin, thank you so much. And thank you for the, practical application of, you can look yourself. I try to get the balances and then harass people. I don't harass people like every quarter like I should, which I'm trying to be a better harasser, you know, because otherwise that money is not drawn down. It can't be because there are no reimbursements that are requested. And so it's in the treasury. And frankly, I'm just saying, and this is not a political statement, but it's just a kind of a financial economic statement. We don't really know what's going to happen with those funds. Even though the courts think there are 210 lawsuits against the current administration. But those lawsuits take time because they're being challenged by the administration and their lawyers, hopefully to go to the Supreme Court. So that's going to take a while. So you have to be really strategic in working, as Robin said, with your business administrator, and if it takes the superintendent or whomever is over finances to work with the superintendent, then that's what you have to do. Because we don't know if those funds are going to be there even for next year. Okay, so it's time for, unless anybody has any other questions. Okay. Thanks, Robin. So Megan, do you want to start?
Yes, I do believe I still need access to, oh, I think I can share now. I think we're good now.
Yeah, everybody has open access.
Okay, is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, I do have some exciting WIDA updates for you all today. So, of course, our contacts information is here. If you have any questions pertaining to anything WIDA assessment related, beginning to end process, please reach out to myself. Anything dealing with any of the alternate assessments for WIDA, please reach out to Tracy Gooley or any accommodation questions when it comes to our ML students that are being assessed. So with that, oh, is it advancing? Yep, here we go. Okay, so just access testing date reminders. We are done with the data validation that LEAs just completed. So if you did not catch an error, don't panic. You're going to be receiving your reports next week through AMS, and then you'll get those printed either on Friday the 16th or Monday the 19th, delivered to your LEA, wherever you have your materials shipped. If you notice any errors on any of the reports, please report those to Marine Rushing. We still have the state level data validation, so we can still make some fixes if need be. Great news from the world of access testing. If your LEA received any alerts, alert notifications, plagiarism notifications, or suspected AI usage notification, we do still ask that you respond to your findings for that. But the great news is Utah saw just an incredible drop in plagiarism and suspected AI usage this year. So everything has been scored. No one will get new notices, but if you still have not completed your investigations for those small amounts of cases, we do ask that that LEAs do respond to with your findings to those suspected plagiarism and suspected AI usage. There are a lot of resources available to you for score reports as they come to you next week. So on this slide, and when I am done, I will attach this slide deck in the chat so you all have access to it and all these links. There are a lot of resources that you can use. I believe WIDA provides parent information about scores in 39 languages. So if that's helpful for you to use, please use those as you start sending out those score reports for families. And then also do note that at the district level, you will get your full district level data file layout, and the new layout of what you can expect is available in the secure portal, or sorry, in AMS. And the second topic here will give you directions on how to access, so you know exactly what data is included in that file that you'll receive in AMS. Okay, so let's get into it already. Screener. I know it feels like we just barely finished access testing and already she's talking about screeners. Screening should continue as you get students through the remainder of this year. As you know, if you have students enroll, you have, at this point in the school year, you have 10 school days to screen those students for services. But in speaking for the new upcoming year, you can start screening students come July 1 for the upcoming year. So again, if a student enrolls during the remainder of the school year, again, you have 10 school days to screen them, but for summer, for the upcoming school year, as students start to enroll, you can begin screening students, kinder, online, starting July 1. If you do need any paper screeners, please reach out. Those should not be paid for by you, the LEA. We have those at the state, and we can mail them to you or arrange for you to come and pick them up. So do know that for the upcoming year, screening can begin July 1st, but please remember as students enroll for the remainder of the year that you do need to screen. Again, let us know if you ever need paper screener for specific accommodations that students may have. Now, really exciting news is finally, it's here, an alternate screener. The alternate screener is going to go live on July 1st. Also on July 1st, there will be a new training available in the WIDA Secure portal for people that will be administering the alternate screener. Do just note that Utah's alternate assessment participation guidelines must be met, okay? We imagine not many students are actually going to qualify for the alternate screener because per our consolidated state ESSA plan and also just Title III law, at the beginning of a school year, you have 30 calendar days to screen a student for language services. And that 30 days is not enough time to identify a student for services per a disability. So if the student does come already with that identified and the documentation, then yes, you could go ahead and use the alternate screener. But if you have any questions, I very much would encourage you to reach out to Tracy Gooley, and she can walk you through this process of who would this be most appropriate for. But it is here. The alternate screener, it's pretty short. It's one-on-one test administration, very similar to the kinder screener. It's only 9 test items. It should take no more than 30 minutes. It will report at all the same levels and domains as the regular screener, except I believe it will only go up to a level 5. So it'll still be on that 1 through 5 scale. And we still are working towards, oh, I forgot to say, everything is free through the secure portal. Again, you shouldn't have to pay for anything. We are still working on establishing the entrance criteria for this. We are taking the recommendation to our TAC and APAC on, I believe, the week of May, I want to say May 19th-ish is when we will be taking it to our TAC and APAC. If APAC signs off on our recommendation for the entrance criteria, then it will go. It will be basically immediate that we can start using that entrance criteria for alternate screener. So just stay tuned, as we still have to go through the proper steps to get it approved. So as soon as that is done, we will announce it as loud as we can to everyone. So exciting that we finally have the alternate screener though. There are still some training opportunities available. The self-paced courses through the secure portal are still available through August. And then we have one more course coming up that is a webinar, a 2-part webinar, expanding reading instruction with multilingual learners. That is still open for enrollment. So if you have anyone that would like to participate in that, we encourage you all to sign up. And again, I will drop these slides with all these links to that in a moment when I am done. All right, so our contact information, again, please reach out to us. And of course, some great resources. If you ever have questions, most questions can be answered by the resources posted on our USBE WIDA tab in our assessments section for assessment and accountability. The big news, though, that we do need to go over is WIDA's alternate exit criteria. As you know, last year was the first year that we did the new WIDA alternate access. And with that, in the past, Utah was never in compliance, unfortunately. We never had an alternate exit criteria. So students that were duly identified never had a path to exit. And we are very happy to say that Utah is finally getting it together. So we did have to go through the long drawn out process to make sure that it is right. So again, as you get your score reports, just as last year, you couldn't exit anyone quite yet, but we will be able to start exiting students as soon as everything is approved. We are in the last steps of the phase of getting everything approved. It's a long process. So we do have resources though. So the WIDA alternate proficiency level descriptors, so how the students score, you can see what are the implications. And then also the alternate can-do descriptors, what students can do. So those are available right now as you get score reports. So this process began last year when the alternate access, the new revised one, came out. We have been meeting with our TAC, our Technical Advisory Committee, frequently about this, and we've been conducting studies as well. Our TAC recommended that we set a provisional cut to say this is where students would exit at either a 4 or a 5. And so, and then they said, and then of course, because of this needing to go into our state's consolidated state ESSA plan, we would have to get stakeholder feedback. And so they said, we would really like you to gather feedback from, stakeholders from Utah, and also consider, different pathways for exiting, because this is a different group of students, duly identified students. So students that are ML and have significant cognitive disabilities, they may have other needs than our students taking the regular just access. And then also recommended that we continue to analyze data over the years, right? So we had our work cut out for us. And so what we did is we convened a stakeholder group. We came up with a couple of models based on a study that we did where we compared the data that we have from alternate access from last year, because we still do not have the scores from this year. So please do note that we only have 1 year of data. And that's not a lot of data to go off of. But we do have several years of DLM data. So the dynamic learning maps is the content summative assessment for students that are significantly cognitively disabled. And those are your 1% kiddos. And so we did do a study with our TAC in the Center for Assessment. And we came up with some ideas to present to our stakeholder group. So on March 21st of this year, we had a stakeholder group, some of which you all participated in. In this stakeholder group, we had the 4 LEAs with the largest EL populations in Utah. We had 3 rural LEAs and 1 charter school represented. And within those representations, 2 of those stakeholders were special education directors. We had 2 assessment directors, and then thank you for the 2 of you that did participate. We had 2 ALS directors, 2 special education teachers, and then 1 EL teacher as well. I would like to also point out that we had 2 people in this group that did participate in the alternate access standards setting last summer in Minneapolis. So they were very familiar with the test and the cuts and how they were arrived at. So with this stakeholder group, we did review federal guidance and the non-negotiables that we had to meet. And we also presented student vignettes. We presented all the data for consideration. And we did show them comparisons to DLM. Remember that the idea is we want students to be academic English proficient in order to access content learning. And so we did some comparisons to DLM to see, where are students proficient on DLM and where are we seeing students proficient also on WIDA alternate access. So the stakeholder group did come down to a final recommendation that we will be taking to our APAC. So this really was a collaborative group effort that your Utah colleagues and educators came to. So essentially what happened is that it's going to be a 2-pathway provisional exit policy. And when I say provisional, again, I really want to reiterate, we only right now have 1 year of data. And we know we need several years of data to get this right. So we love that we have the opportunity to amend our ESSA plan. And so we want to say that this is not set in stone. As we get more data, we can fine tune this over the years. So right now, the recommendation from our stakeholder group is that the primary pathway is that a student that receives a 5 would automatically exit. So WIDA alternate access, it reports at the whole numbers. So it's only a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It does not go up to 6 like regular access, and it doesn't report at the tenths like regular access. They are just whole numbers. So the primary exit, all students that get a 5 would automatically exit. But then there would be a secondary pathway. If a student receives a 4, an overall composite of a 4 on alternate access, and a DLM ELA, English Language Arts score on DLM of a 4, then the student has the option to exit, but it's based on the LEA's decision. So it's at the LEA's discretion. So it would have to be the IEP team, which must include the EL specialist. Okay. So if they decide, and we will provide guidance on determining that, but if a student gets a 4 on alt access and a DLM ELA 4, then the LEA will have the decision and the power in their hands to decide if the student should exit. So that's what we're going to be bringing again in May to our APAC for approval. We do realize that there are still things that aren't quite perfect with this exit because students taking DLM, they don't start they start taking DLM in 3rd grade, but you don't receive those DLM scores until the beginning of the next year, so in 4th grade. So we are trying to now do more studies with alternate Acadians to see how we can do that. And again, like we said, we're planning on amending stuff as we get more data to perfect this and make it right for the student population. So we know that right now, K through 3 alternate access students would only be able to exit with the primary pathway. So do note that. So this right now, so you know, kind of data wise with these 2 pathways, this would see actually an exit rate of around 17% for our dually identified students. That's pretty big compared to our regular access, which we now see at about a 10% exit rate. So students in this group would have higher exit rates. So do keep that in mind as well. And if you guys have any questions at any point, please just come off of mute or type anything in the chat. So this was the recommendation we landed on. The stakeholder group also said, really, when we got into it, we need additional training for educators administering WIDA alternate access. Quite often when we've gone out and done monitoring and observations, we've noticed that quite often the people giving the alternate access are not people that work with the students regularly, so they don't quite understand the accommodations and needs of the students, nor are the students really comfortable with those people always. They also recommended that we just collect more data, just like our TAC also recommended. We know that scores are going to change over time, and we're going to be able to see better patterns as we get more data. We want to also start tracking who's actually administering these assessments to know, like, are they being administered in a really reliable way? And also we want to start maybe, as we get more data, disaggregating it by disability type, and again, bringing in that Acadians alternate data as well. And we want to revisit this exit policy annually. We do have a lot of amendments on the calendar for the next couple of years. So we have the opportunity also to just keep revisiting this. So it's kind of nice. There's just lots of changes in this world, so we can continue to revisit it and tweak it till we get it right. So, and then of course, the Center for Assessment, they pretty much concur with the stakeholders groups. they want us to monitor it, revisit it. Again, maybe start to look deeper into the services for these students. What do they actually look like? And there are questionnaires available for alternate access, and there is a required questionnaire for DLM. And how can we maybe use those questionnaires to help inform these decisions as well? So, and maybe even be a part of the exit policies moving forward. So we'll start to look at that even further. So what are the next steps? Again, we still cannot exit students taking alternate access because we have to go through a process per U.S. Department of Education guidelines and procedure. So we are taking this to all of our different stakeholder groups. This has gone to assessment directors. This has gone to our special education directors, and it is now being presented to you, the ALS directors, for any feedback, concerns, or anything like that. Once we get those final stakeholder feedback, we will present it again to our TAC and APAC in May. Once that is done, we will write up the draft amendment for ESSA, and that will go out for public comment. And then once we get public comment and need to make any final edits, it will be sent to our Utah State Board of Education for approval to be submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. So once the U.S. Department of Education receives it, they have 90 days to respond. If they don't respond within those 90 days, it's automatically approved. But if they do respond, we might have to go back and forth. So we're not quite sure how long this timeline is going to take. I will say the last ESSA amendment that we did, it took 9 months once we submitted it to US Ed to get the final approval. So we're going to just ask for your patience and know that we're going to communicate everything and where we're at for this to be approved. But again, we can't exit until the U.S. Department of Education does approve it. So that is what I have for you for updates. If you have any concerns about those 2 pathways for alternate exit, please let us know now because we really, really need this feedback. I see Beverly has, I'm going to go back to that slide also so you all can see it. I see Beverly has a question.
Hi, Megan. So I have a question about something else. So if there's
Okay.
anyone else that wants to jump on with questions, obviously I helped come up with the pathway, so I'm fine with them. So,
Yeah.
so
Beverly, thank you. Beverly, shout out to Beverly. She was one of our ALS representatives in that stakeholder group.
I'm going to
Great.
pause for a minute. If anyone else has questions about those, then I come back to me, okay?
Okay. Beverly's getting some thanks for participating in this. I guess I should ask, does anyone have any objections for or concerns about these proposed exit pathways for our alternate group? Not seeing any objections. As you guys think about it, and again, I'll be posting these slides in the chat. You can send me any concerns, questions, or concerns through email as well. So we just need to capture the feedback as well, because part of the process for any ESSA amendment is making sure that we're listening to all stakeholders in the process and that we are getting the feedback. Thank you, Paula and Melinda. All right, Beverly, question?
Actually, I have two. Can you go back
Okay.
can you go back to the slides with talking about WIDA access results being reported this year. Did you say that we can access them electronically right now?
No,
Okay.
the first. So next week.
Okay, okay. Just making sure because I'm like, wow, that would be very exciting if we could get them today. Okay, second question is, first of all, of course, I'm super excited about the alternate access and it's been needed for so long. Are we considering, or do we already have some talk discussions started and maybe a stakeholder group looking at consistent, cohesive guidance for students that maybe are in like an EEC unit, because we've got this in between, right? Where we have students that are in general ed, and then we have a screener for gen ed and some, moderate disabilities, but then we have our significant cognitive disabilities, but then we have these students too that are coming to us in the EEC units who have significant struggles, and hence their specialized programming. Is there any, and I know that there are ways we can give the paper and things like that, but is there any discussion, or maybe someone already has the answer and I just don't know it, of that we make our accommodations, but we still struggle with, I think, getting an accurate English language proficiency score with our current WIDA access and screener for these students that aren't the severest cognitive disabilities, but fairly severe. Does that make
Right. So yes, we
sense?
are in the process of shoring up that guidance, and that is under the direction of Tracy Hooley. Right now, because of board rule, students that can qualify for the alternate screener, they do have to meet those participation guidelines. Although there is discussion in updating that guidance and rule to say, like, if there's documentation for wherever the student is coming from, if they're coming from within the United States, hopefully that documentation is going to follow them anyways, and so that would be there. If they're coming from another country, we are starting to look at what would be acceptable documentation to show that these disabilities are there. So there are discussions happening already about that policy, to what kind of documentation will we accept to show that these students can qualify to take the alternate screener. Utah's in a really
and forget the alternate
interesting.
screener. I'm just looking even for guidance, because there are going to be students that will not qualify for the alternate screener. And
Yeah.
it makes sense, right? But those really specific guidelines, I know that some students aren't able to complete the whole test, and you've given me some thoughts over the years, but I feel like I wish it could be kind of standardized, at least the guidance standardized, so that we're all making similar decisions. And I know a lot of our EEC teachers really want the information. So
yeah.
And I'm not sure what exactly to tell them.
So students that won't qualify for alternate but still have accommodation needs, I will work with Tracy. We do have some guidance that's already out there to help with that. And as you know, per ESSA, it does have to be a standardized procedure. So I will talk and work with Tracy to say, how can we shore up this guidance even more? But right now, the guidance that we do have, Tracy will email you and communicate with you anytime. But also there is the assessment guidance that's posted. It's also one of the tabs. Not tabs. It's available. If you go to our the WIDA tab, you'll see assessment guidance on there as well. That gives you some stuff to go off of, but every situation is a little unique per what accommodations a student may need. And so I would encourage you to reach out to Tracy again to say what would be the right path for this student, especially if they're not able to access all the domains. And so where do we go from there? But there is a standardized procedure that Tracy provides when students can't access all the domains as well, but they're not an alternate screener, right?
And that would go for access as well then?
Yeah, and if students can't access all the domains, we do have ways to calculate scores still. The biggest one, and also just a sneak preview, we know that if a student can't access speaking, that would basically mean, hey, you can't exit, right? But we are looking at an alternate pathway as well to amend in the future. So I know that I'm just about at my time limit, so I want to respect our teachers that are here today as well. I would just ask, please email me any questions, concerns, and let Tracy and myself know. I think someone else may have came off of mute for a question. Not sure, but if not, otherwise, I think we are good to go. Christelle, did you need anything else from me? Stop
Uh,
sharing.
Yeah, no. Thanks, Megan. I really appreciate you attending our meeting. And I'm going to hand it over to Melinda at Cache County. She'll do the introductions. And the reason this is important is the teachers that are going to share with us, you know, are also teaching, and so they have a limited amount of time to present. So, Melinda.
Hi, Christelle. I was checking to see if Marla was on. She's one of our teachers at North Cache. Let me see on the participant board. Marla, are you on? We told her 9:30, so I'm hoping maybe she's just taking a minute to log in. While we're waiting for Marla, I had just noticed on the agenda that Christelle had asked for from testimonials from those in the endorsement. So I emailed a few and thinking that nobody would be able to or want to, and had a few responses. So thanks for letting us share. We have some exciting growth with some of the teachers in our district who have been participating in this program. One of them couldn't come, but she wrote me a little testimonial. She said, "Is it okay if I write something?" So I said, "Sure." And this teacher was fun to work with because she first said, "I'm not sure this endorsement will really apply to me because I teach math." And it was really fun to see her transition into this conversation here where she says, "I believe that math lends itself to EL friendly practices. The main thing that has changed for me is that now I get to teach an EL tutorial course. And because of this opportunity, I've been able to form relationships with more EL students and their friends. I have a large group of excellent EL math students who are there because they've requested to be in my class. And they're not afraid or intimidated to ask questions due to the relationships we built and the trust they have in me. And she says that she believes they have benefited from the program by having a teacher more aware of the bigger picture. And she says, I have confidence in modifying curriculum, in helping translate when appropriate, and in connecting to students and their home language, and highly recommends it." I just thought that was worth sharing how much she's benefited from that.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate that. I think that's the other thing that it's about adult learning in a way that creates the teaching profession as a learning opportunity for the adults working with the students, and learning from and with the students. And students really understand that relationship piece, and it makes a huge difference in relationship, to their ability and competence in taking the kind of risks that are necessary to do well on academic subjects. So, Melinda, thank you so much.
You're
So
welcome. I still don't see Marla in, but did you have some questions we can vet? I'm fine to talk.
Well, one thing I think and I can't remember when you presented your design, the design for your ESL endorsement, competency based, which is a really important element. Because the point of competency-based ESL endorsement is to use the local resources in a way that makes a significant difference for the candidates who then will apply what it is they're learning to their actual classroom. So do you want to say anything from your perspective about the insights that you've gained in working with teachers in a competency-based endorsement?
Insights I've gained, I enjoy it. I've enjoyed being able to work with them and also get to watch them teach. So it's not just, you know, meeting in class each week, but really being able to get in the classroom and watch them improve as educators. And we've modified a little bit the observation list that you've shared of good practices, and have used that. And just being able to mark more things on the list every time I go in has been really exciting, and to see good practices happening and the students having more access to what the teachers are able to do. Even simple things like, oh, now I'm writing a language standard and content standard for every lesson, and them not realizing the value it had for all their students. That has been also exciting. And the transformation of teachers saying, I'm not, you know, from the first class to, I'm not sure how I can really accommodate all these individual students on all these different levels. I can't create individual lesson plans for all of these kids. This is going to be too hard. Thinking that's what we were all about. But then really being able to see, oh, I can do this with my full class, with everyone, and it's good instruction for all my students. Important strategies for all, essential for MLs. It's kind of where we've come from. Paula, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to, so I'm the federal programs director and I work with Melinda closely, and I had the opportunity to take the ESL endorsement course, the very first cohort that we had. And I'm just so impressed with what Emmy and Melinda have done. And she's right, the coaching piece is the key to success. Book knowledge is just half the battle, but being able to take the information into practice is what the key to the success of that program. And I've watched it happen. I felt it myself. It was just one of those pieces that sometimes we forget when we take courses, that is a vital piece of making something actually stick, and not just be something that they learn, but something that they apply, and then it can carry through into their practice. So it's been really wonderful. We've now expanded to, we're hoping to have 2 cohorts next year running 2 courses. We've just been doing 1, and it's just expanded, and we've had now people who have gone through the course that have now helped us become, with the coaching side of it, helping us with coaching. So they are actual classroom teachers who are ESL endorsed through this endorsement, and they have now helped us with some of the coaching, which is really, I mean, peer-to-peer feedback is sometimes even better than what we can offer. So they have a little bit more street cred or credibility.
Street cred, I like that.
Yeah, I think this idea of, you know, immediate application in relationship to what's relevant for the student and what's relevant for the adult learner creates a different way of learning that's more authentic, because you can apply it and then see the results. You know, Fullen says that burnout is the gap between how hard you're working and the results you see. And so this kind of approach ends up, you know, kind of collapsing the burnout gap in relationship to the results that teachers are actually seeing. I'm also really excited that you're using the observation tool. We have people who have used the tool, Priscilla from Weber, Michelle from Jordan, Jenny Cross from Box Elder. And so, you know, the way in which we're expanding the ability of district people to support their coaching and the instruction is really important. So I don't see anyone.
Marla's here. I see her. She popped on. So Marla.
Wait, let's give it a little context.
Yeah.
Marla teaches at a middle school. She can probably give a better explanation of what she does, but some of the courses she teaches are in the science domain. So Marla.
Take it away, Marla. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, you're on mute still.
Tap to unmute. There, did that work?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Buried in technology, writing for national board. So yeah, 7th and 8th grade science all the time. So I don't know what else you want for right now, but I did the ESL endorsement a year ago, 2 years ago. Love it. Best thing I ever did.
Okay, so Marla, why don't you tell us why it was the best thing you ever did?
It taught me how to engage not just the English language learners, but all of the kids. And one of the things that I found really interesting was the first time that I made one of my slideshows with both English and Spanish, because Spanish is the predominant language in the classroom. Not only did I have the Spanish kids come up and help correct Google Translate for me, which got them engaged in the lesson, but I had students that were in the classroom that were taking Spanish classes that said, oh, wow, Guy, that really helps me understand how to use the context of the Spanish as well. It also put a little bit more, I think, of an appreciation for students in the classroom of how hard it is for somebody else to learn that's here with a different language. Because sometimes I'd just put up the slide that was Spanish and then ask the kids that speak English, okay, what do you know about this? My word wall is in 2 languages now. I'm more culturally sensitive to the kids. I ask a lot more questions about their background and, where are they from, and don't assume that they're born American, and don't assume that they're born, internationally and moved in. So it's changed my perspective more than any other PD opportunity that I've had. And I've had a lot. I've done a lot of PD, and this is my third certification in the last 3 years. So
Marla, you made I've been in education for a long time. And so your comments, have made me so happy. Probably the happiest I've been this year.
well, good.
So thank you so much for sharing your actual experience of, what an authentic professional learning experience is, and how that learning translates into the way in which student-teacher interactions change the culture of the classroom. So thank you so much for the work that you are doing. Keep
You
doing
bet.
it.
It is the funnest, hardest job I've ever had in my life. And I'm non-traditional. I did the alternative route to licensure at 45 and moved into the classroom. So I'm an animal science reproductive physiologist in a previous, rendition. But I love this. I love teaching. Love it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for
Bet.
your commitment.
Thanks.
You bet.
She is a wonderful teacher out in North Park, and since she's had or North Cache, sorry. And I know that when we have a newcomer student at North Cache and we're doing some transition meetings, they're first to look, the counselors look and say, well, let's see when Marla's teaching science, and they want to make sure that they get that student in her class, and that really speaks to her skills and knowledge. So thanks, Marla.
You
We
bet.
have Cindy on. She came to share. She was one of our participants and has now become one of the ML coaches. Thanks again, Marla.
Yep. So I'm good to go.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, thanks.
back
Thanks,
to
Marla.
national board. Woohoo! Wish me luck. 10 days to submitting.
Good luck. Good luck,
Have-
Marla.
Thanks. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Cindy, go ahead.
You're on mute, Cindy.
That's why I'm asking. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, I just taught the tail end of hers, and a lot of the stuff she said I agree with. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm Cindy Page. I teach math in 7-8 middle school. I teach 8th grade. I've taught for 22 years. I've been ESL endorsed for the past 2 years. I got my ESL endorsement with the first cohort that Cash did, and then they asked me to help with the observations and kind of help as like I guess like a TA type of a person. So that's been really fun. The biggest things that I have noticed that have changed with my teaching is I am much more aware of trying to get the 4 modes of language in a short amount of period in my teaching. Well, I taught math for years and I did not include writing very much at all. Like very rarely did I include like a writing prompt. Like they would write their like equations down. But when I got my ESL endorsement, that's one thing that I've changed a lot. Like I've even come up with like an engagement strategy that I use a ton now where they work on whiteboards and I give them a prompt and they write on the prompt and then they switch whiteboards with their neighbor and then they read their neighbor's prompt and then they discuss it. And so they're getting all 4 within a couple minutes. Like I'm trying to introduce more things like that to get all those 4 modes of language. Yes. Oh, Summer. Sorry. Sorry, the girl that's taking my class, I forgot to tell her the passcode for the quiz. But anyways, so that's helped a ton. Also, just my sensitivity to like not even just the ESL population, but like any comments that are made in class that are like I talk so much, like even at the beginning of every try now, I'm like, hey, you know, we're accepting of all people. We don't judge for sexual preference. We don't judge for hair color. We don't judge for race. Like we talk about that a lot more. And anytime kids are making, if I do hear a comment, I'm definitely like addressing that right off. One thing in the ESL endorsement, we had a student panel come in and one of the girls said that she had a teacher that something like that happened in class and the teacher did not address it. And she felt like the teacher agreed with it because she did not address that. And that like hit home to me because I thought I'll probably get emotional. I'm like, how many times has that happened that I did not hear that? And they thought I agreed because I didn't, you know, because before I was like, I don't want to bring attention to it. I don't want to make that person feel. So that's just something that I have changed a lot. And my students, I had to hold a kid after class the other day because he said something and it wasn't about race. It was like he called something zesty or something. And I called him after class. He's like, oh, I know, Mrs. Page, we're neutral in here. We love everyone. So I'm trying to hit that home that like we accept differences. And that's one big change that, I mean, it's not like I wasn't accepting for differences before, but I just didn't explicitly teach it. And now I explicitly teach it. One thing that I have noticed also, as I have been observing other teachers and giving them feedback, when I first observed them, there's not a lot of speaking in the classroom. They're just working. And then after, and I talked to them about it, like I just did we observe them 3 times, my last observation, and every classroom that I was in was doing some type of partner talk. And there was so much more verbalization and just more use of all of those for language modalities. When I make lessons, I'm constantly thinking in the back of my head, what accommodations can I make? I'll do a lot more just like, oh, look, here's a number line just to have on your desk. Or I've made a lot of things like that. And I heard the teacher before, my vocabulary, my word wall is in Spanish and English now too, that I have posted at the back of my wall. And when I introduce those new vocabulary words, I put it up and we talk about it. I do a lot more with vocabulary than I used to, like having them draw pictures and doing 4 forms and having them talk about it. Whereas before I would just put it up in English and tell them what it was. Like there's just so many changes that I have made in my teaching. And like I said, before I got my ESL endorsement, I taught 20 years and I felt like I was a pretty good teacher. You know, I had a lot of experience, but the last 2 years, I would definitely say my teaching has increased dramatically from getting that ESL endorsement. And I love helping with it because when I go to the classes again, it reminds me like, oh yeah, I should be doing that. And then I can go make adjustments as needed. But I don't know. Did you have questions for me? Like that was kind of
that's wonderful, Cindy. And I think the other thing that's really important is this idea about how you build local capacity so that when the competency-based endorsement and your presentation is done, you know, how you maximize your learning by ending up, you know, working with other teachers in a
Mhm.
peer observation role. And this is really the whole goal. The whole goal of competency-based ESL endorsement is making the adult learning so relevant that it ends up spreading throughout the school and throughout
Yeah.
the district. So, you know, you've shared this really great example of the way in which teaching academic language in the content area is so important.
Yeah.
So it's really a valuable insight. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed it. And like I said, I've learned a lot. And I'm also like the team lead at my school. And so even just like, I like kind of pass on the information to, you know, my PLC team and, you know, other teachers. Like our admin will come have teachers come ask me questions like, hey, what would you do in this circumstance? Or how can I? So I've been able to kind of pull like a leadership role also in my school to kind of spread the word. And I'm really trying to convince some of my coworkers to do the ESL endorsement right now. I'm like, I think I've got 2 of them that applied yesterday because I'm like, you really need to do this. It will help you be a better teacher and meet the needs of your students. So I think 2 of them applied yesterday. I'm hoping at least, but trying
Good,
to
thank
spread
you.
the word in the secondary realm.
Yeah, that's very important. Thank you for your advocacy and for your professionalism, you know, in a profession that we all love, or else we wouldn't be here. So thank you
Yep,
so
for sure.
much.
100%. All right.
So Paula and Melinda, thank you. Thank you so much for creating this opportunity for all of us to better see what the competency-based approach can do for, you know, veteran teachers, new teachers, you know, and I think this makes a big difference. So Paula and Melinda, do you want to have the last word before we go on?
I don't know what more to say. We're so proud of our teachers. We're over here like tearing up, like, well, they're so good. So, thanks for giving us the opportunity to show them off a little bit. We're so proud of them. And thanks for the opportunity to share. One thing that we've also liked in our endorsement is the shadowing opportunity that we provide to, the teachers in the cohort. And we've just been hopping around to schools to share the shadowing results from this last round. Just being able to watch the students and track the language they're using in the classroom and then share it on a district level at the schools has made an impact, and they like seeing that our extended discourse has increased over the past 3 years, district wide. So being able to track that data has been a fun part of the endorsement. So,
And building awareness with our admin as well,
yeah,
just so that they know the value that is there. And you know, some of these schools are on TSI for EL subgroups, and this helps them to understand maybe some strategies and things that they can do to help these students. Yeah,
that's all.
thanks for
Yeah, I
the
think.
opportunity.
Well, thank you. And for those who don't know, the presentation that they did a couple of years ago, the shadowing of teachers, teachers shadowing, so teachers in the program actually shadowing a student, they actually monitor the way in which language is used. And then as a consequence, they gather all that data and they present it so they can actually see the way in which teaching academic conversation, the content is being increased. So the shadowing, you know, I think Wasatch is using that now. So the work that you've done has made a significant difference. So thanks, Paula and Melinda.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're going to go on to Tiffany. And this goes back to this idea of sharing promising practices. Tiffany Evans,
Yeah, good morning.
good morning. So,
Okay, let me share this real quick. Okay, can you see that?
yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I'm here on behalf of Michelle Eldridge. She wasn't able to make it today, so she sent me instead. I'm the district coordinator in our department that goes out and helps with a lot of these services that we provide our schools. So she asked me just to talk about how we evaluate our ML supports throughout our district. And we kind of follow this feedback cycle loop that we created a little graphic for. So starting with, we have a monthly assistant principal meeting, and all of our assistant principals have been designated to be over our ML supports and to work with our ML students. So we meet with them monthly, and there we do different trainings. We have little data workshops that we go over our strategic plan as a whole district, and we see how our ML students working towards that plan. We help them go through all the data. We give them time to sort through it and to look through it, to make plans. And then they take that data and those plans and go back to work with their teachers. So then once they're going back and they're working with their teachers, then they come back to us and provide feedback. So once we get the feedback on what is working and what's not working, we try to have our quick responsive action to that feedback. And so we have just a couple examples of things that have recently this year have been happening. So one of the first things was our translation services. We noticed with so many new to the country students that we've been receiving that we needed to kind of beef up this area based on the feedback we were getting from assistant principals and from teachers. We started with using our in-district interpreters, which was great for some of the more common languages that we've been seeing. So that's great for in-person Spanish. It's been good for, we've had like Chinese, but once we started getting some of these other languages, one of the requested languages was Pinglapese, and we needed to have a Pinglapese in-person translator for an IEP. And so we found that we were using LanguageLine, and the feedback we got was LanguageLine can be great. And we had a lot of positive feedback from LanguageLine, and it's been working in a lot of our schools, but there's been a couple instances where it just wasn't quite meeting the needs of our students and our families. And so we've reached out, and now we have contracted with Linguistica to also come in and provide some of that other support. So we found that we needed more than just one company. We had to branch out to Linguistica. So Linguistica is now contracted with us, and they have Pinglapese. And so now we're able to help provide services for that family and that IEP. We did have to plan it 2 weeks out because it does take some time to get someone who speaks Pinglapese. And then we've also wanted to find more in-person services too. And so we're currently working with InSync interpreters and ComGap to provide some in-person translation for languages that might be a little more not as common that we can provide in our district. So that's one of the ways that we saw the needs from our schools and getting that feedback from our assistant principals, and then tried to have that quick responsive action. So that way we don't leave families feeling like they're just stranded in this area and they don't know what's going on. Another way that we've seen it is with our ELD phonics in our high school and our secondary programs. We had students come in new to the country, and our teachers who taught ELD, amazing teachers, but they were just like, we are not prepared to teach letter names and sounds. We're not prepared to teach like these basic phonics. And so we were able to get with them, and we trained them on how to teach the most basic elementary skills to these secondary students. We got them programs and supports, and this is all based off of that feedback. So they gave us the feedback, then they don't feel comfortable with it. Then our assistant principals were seeing that it was hard for the teachers to get to that level of students. And so with our response, we made sure they got more training. We got them the programs that they needed. We even pulled some of the elementary programs and ordered the materials to get them into the secondaries. And we helped them learn how to teach that and the why behind it too, and how it works. We have high school teachers learning how to take kids from letter names and sounds to blending into actually reading fluent. So that's been exciting to see too. Another way was with our elementary new to the country students. A lot of teachers just were expressing to their assistant principals that they weren't sure how to support the students or what to do with the students, or how do they meet their needs, because it was newer to them that year. And so we had to work with assistant principals on having the coaches come in. And so we started meeting weekly with the instructional coaches of the buildings and giving them the training that they need to go help those teachers as well. So we started doing case studies. We started helping them feel comfortable to know the materials and the tools and how to go support those teachers to work with their new country students as well. And then one of the final examples is with Elevation. So we were contracted with Elevation. I personally loved Elevation. I loved how pretty it looked. I loved the interface. I loved the resources. I loved all of the things that I could pull from it and use. But when we started to look at the data and we looked at, is this really helping our students? And is it helping us get to the goals? And is it helping more than just 2 people in the district? It wasn't an effective use of our funds. And so we ended up terminating the contract and using that money in the other areas. And I just described to better help and provide services for our students. And it has been great since terminating that too. I was sad to see it leave, but also it was 2 of us using it out of our whole district. There was just a handful of people who were really using it, and it just wasn't getting us the results that we had hoped for. And so we had to like take a hard look at that and get feedback from principals and assistant principals of, was it a lack of training? And we felt like we were really good at training and pushing it and helping people and coaching. It just wasn't one of those tools that was really effective when it came to the end of the day. Chriselle, is there anything else I should be talking about?
No, I think one of the things that's really impressive, and I'll just say this in relationship to your graphic, it's about evaluating based on feedback from what's really happening in schools instead
Yeah.
of, you know, this idea of making assumptions and then thinking that people really far removed from what's happening in the classroom should be making the decisions for the people who are doing the actual work. And so
Yeah,
this idea of, quick responsive action is the way in which you evaluate program effectiveness related to student outcomes and then realign your resources instead of constantly renewing contracts that aren't making a difference. And so,
absolutely.
the graphic and the way in which you're organizing feedback from administrators and teachers and looking at data to make solid decisions related to how funds are used. If people actually ask students the kind of software that's being used, they would find out that most of the software selected by whoever the experts are identified as, oftentimes does not really connect with the students, like at all. And so then spending funds that way and then complaining about not having enough money doesn't make any sense. The whole
Yeah.
goal is to evaluate program effectiveness.
Yeah, we did try, I mean, to go along with that, we tried a software program and we piloted it with our elementary and with our secondary. And we found with the elementary, it really was difficult and really hard for those elementary students. And it's hard for the teachers, it was hard for the staff. And we found like it wasn't a good fit for them. But for secondary, they absolutely loved it. And so instead of buying the bulk contract of all the licenses, we realized like, okay, we might need to do Lexia English still with our younger students who are brand new to the country and needing that support. And the other program was a better fit with our secondary. But it is trying to get that feedback from the people who are going to have to implement it, because it looked great when we got the demo and the presentation, but it was getting the feedback from the coaches, the assistant principals, the teachers, even the students. We interviewed students to see what the experience was like for them. And it was interesting to hear. I mean, you ask them questions and they'll give you all the feedback you need to make those decisions.
Yeah, Tiffany, so thank you so much. Piloting projects and getting feedback to make resource allocations worthwhile
Yeah.
is something that is, it is critical. And so I'm just so happy, Tiffany, that you were here to talk about this because you know, this is a passion for me about I'm a fiscal conservative, and when people continually spend funds and complain that they don't have enough funds, and the results for students, um, there aren't any results for students, it just seems really aggravating when you can just really ask the students and the teachers and the administrators what's really working for them. So I just
Yeah.
want to thank you so much. So there's a question, what is the name of the program that works better for secondary students? So Tiffany.
Oh my gosh, let me think. I'm more elementary, so it was one that we didn't love. Ari, do you remember the secondary program that they use? Yeah. Oh, Summit K-12.
So what is
There
it
you go.
again? Summit?
Summit K-12. And I think they've made adaptations to it now, but it was like in its rougher stage where it was a little bit difficult for the elementary to use and to kind of navigate. But the secondary loved the Summit K-12 program.
Okay, so Summit would be just SUMMIT.
We'll be dating Summit K-12 next year. Yeah. It's
Okay.
good to date around. I agree.
Yeah, and they're dating us hard, right? They're going to give us a
Yeah.
host of,
Yeah.
free resources and
Yeah.
products and pilots. So they're definitely dating us really
Yeah.
well. So we're looking into that. But we do plan on in Jordan District keeping Elevation as it's been useful for our teachers and ELD leads at the school level. But again, looking at program need and what schools are resulting in, I think it's great that you all are looking at that.
I agree. I was like, I loved Elevation, and I think it can be so effective. But for some reason with ours, when we looked at the data and we looked at the usage and just talking with teachers and trying to figure out why it's not catching on, it just wasn't a good fit for us.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, for adding that.
Uh-huh.
Chelsea is saying Elevation is planning to release a progress monitoring component next spring. So I think this is the other thing that I'm just going to say to all of you. If you're spending money, you have to be very conscientious about whether it works or it doesn't. And the contract, this whole idea of, different companies privatizing public education and then, doing it in a glittering kind of way, as if it would suit your needs. So the needs of students depends. It's not just, all of Utah should be using this. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why the competency-based ESL endorsement makes a difference, because it focuses on the individual needs and the resources that are connected to the local community. That's really all, that's what we need to focus on, and how we use feedback to evaluate its effectiveness. And you have to hold vendors to a higher standard, frankly. And if they're not following through with what they've promised, then terminate them. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just logical. If you're not getting what the contract says they were going to offer you, you have no obligation to keep giving them money. So thanks again, Tiffany and Michelle, for your comments. I really appreciate it. And I think we're going to go to, we're not going to take a break. We're going to go to Connie. And Connie is going to give a brief introduction about the refugee awareness projects that they do continually and do such a great job on. So Connie.
Thank you, Christelle, for inviting me to present this morning. Welcome, everybody. I am going to just share a couple of successes that from the district level that we've seen since we have had refugees come into our district in 2022. And I know a lot of we've borrowed and stole, from other districts, resources and supports. So we don't pretend that everything that we're doing is brand new. And but one of the successes I'd like to share is our onboarding. When we first had an influx of refugee students coming in, we really didn't have a process for the onboarding and enrollment for our new students. So at that point, we collaborated with our Family and Student Services Department to coordinate what would happen when we had families that would enroll in Davis School District. And typically what would happen, the process that we put in place is that usually it's the International Rescue Committee and Catholic Community Services were the two resettlement agencies that would host families. And so the resettlement agency would contact our student services department, and then our student services director would reach out to the principals, the family advocates. They would reach out to federal programs, myself and my colleagues, in the interpretations coordinator, to set up that enrollment meeting at the school. So I think that has, we still have some little issues that happen once in a while, but we feel that that's been really successful in welcoming our families into the schools. And one of the things that we do in that I participated in the elementary schools with our onboarding is that we have our refugee advocate that meets at the school with the interpreter, with the family. And then we do, in the elementary schools, we try to do, depending on the time of the year, if it's in the summer or during the school year, we have the principal walk the family around the school with the students. If the students are come into the school and or in that part of that onboarding meeting, they walk them around. They meet the cafeteria worker. They meet the classroom teachers. They walk around the school so they feel more comfortable in that setting before their first day of school. And I think that's been really a positive success with our onboarding. Another success is that we have the most amazing through our workforce services grant, we were able to hire additional staff to specifically work with our refugee families. And so we hired 4 refugee advocates that work directly with the families, and they meet with the families within the first 30 days. They meet with them at the school for that onboarding meeting, but then they do a home visit during that first 30 days to get more information from the families about educational background, and any questions that the families have about accessing the resources at the school level. And along with that, we hired, we currently have 5 success coaches that specifically work with the students in the school. So they have a caseload of students. The advocates have a caseload, and so do the success coaches of students and families that they work with. And I've been really I just amazed at how well the team works together to support the families and the students. And the second success that I wanted to share is that we went down and visited Granite School District's refugee community night, and our advocates immediately wanted to do something in Davis School District similar. So in 2 short years, we've held 3 community awareness nights and it's really to help our community understand who the families are, who their neighbors are in the community that they can support. And so I'm not gonna spend any more time talking to you. I'm gonna turn the time over to Jelena, and Angie, who are refugee advocates, and they're going to share some of the successes that they've experienced. And then if you have any questions, we're free to answer any questions anybody has. Okay.
Thanks, Connie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Connie. Am I good to take over?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Jelena, as Connie said, so thank you. We're just going to touch on a couple of things that Connie just mentioned, and I'm glad that she mentioned what she did because it made me think of some other things. Some of the things that we've learned. I just saw Melissa's comment about the awareness nights, and we'll touch on that a little bit more as well. But some of the things that we've learned, there's the given that newcomers are just like everyone else. They want to feel a sense of belonging. They want to feel welcomed and safe, and they want their kids to be safe and learning and growing. And so what we've learned is how important community is, but also networking and utilizing the skills that are already within the school district. So networking with local organizations has been a huge help for us, like Utah Refugee Connection or the Refugee Services Office, Lifting Hands International, Know Your Neighbor. There's so many different local organizations that are doing incredible things, and they have resources that we didn't know about in the beginning. And so meeting with them and going to the refugee provider meeting monthly has been a huge help, especially when we heard updates from CCS and IRC every month, and we can talk to the directors in person, and that has been really helpful. So knowing what our families' needs are, that's really important. And that way we can communicate those with the schools, so the schools are aware, especially if, for example, if we're at a home visit and we learn something connected to a student's behavior is actually tied to some kind of trauma that happened as a child, the school might not have known that. And maybe the counselor can utilize that to be more resourceful for that student, to meet them where they are so they feel understood and that they're not being misrepresented, and so that we can help support parents, students, and school staff more. And so those were just a couple of the things that I wanted to touch on. Angie will touch on more, but I also wanted to talk about how important communication with the schools is, because if the school staff don't know something, if the teachers don't know something, especially about religious dietary exemptions or cultural norms that they don't, maybe they're not aware of those things. It's helpful if we can go and say, hey, for this month of Ramadan, this student might be really exhausted. They might not be eating in class, just little things that maybe people don't know. Raising awareness is so important. And we've learned so much on our own with meeting families that it's been really, really great. And we've been able to help educate other people, and we're constantly learning every day. And it can be really intimidating for people, maybe not people in this group atmosphere, but for a lot of people, it's very intimidating to say hello to someone that is different religiously, linguistically, everything different. It can be very intimidating to say hello or try and use Google Translate. So we try and encourage even the smallest things with the community members or people we know or teachers, and try and help them know about different apps that they can use. We've had a teacher find a really good app that I think was for Dari from Afghanistan, if I remember correctly, but they were able to find their own app and they let us know that that was working for them in the class. So things like that, I just wanted to touch on, and Angie will touch on a couple of other things that we've learned.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting us come and speak with you today. My name is Angie Hawks. I am also a refugee family advocate with Davis School District, and I work hand in hand with Jelena and Connie and some other wonderful people who are here on this call. Just wanted to touch on, well, we do focus on the students in one regard. As advocates, we like to focus on the parents, and one major barrier that we've learned with our parents is the inability to find affordable or accessible English learning opportunities. And you think, gosh, well, Davis County is right next door to Salt Lake County where all the great resources are. And yes, that's true. We are next door neighbors, but you have to think even more outside of the box. Our refugee parents generally have transportation barriers. They don't have transportation to be able to access those really awesome English learning opportunities. And so as a district, we've tried to think out of the box a little bit and have tried to provide opportunities for not just our refugee parents, but other newcomers as well, who like to practice their English skills. And in doing so, we've had additional success with inviting community members who are cleared through the district to be able to come and volunteer at our English learning opportunities. And that way, we're not only providing the opportunity to learn English skills, we are introducing community members to these families who get to know them and really get to love them and want to spend time with them. And Jelena and I personally have run into our refugee families in the community and see other community members who are helping them outside, you know, in our grocery stores or at the library. And it's just really awesome to be able to connect those people. And we've been able to do that through some of our English opportunities. We've also learned there's not one specific answer or solution for everyone. Each student is an individual and each family is an individual. And so as advocates, when we go into the homes and we meet with the families, we get to know them really well. And it takes, I don't know, about a year, would you say, Jelena, for us to build really good trust with them. But it's really exciting. For example, I've been working with a family for 2 years, and the father finally called my phone to ask me a question, which is huge for him because his home language is Kinyarwanda, and he's been learning English, and he reached out to me asking me for some help. And it was like the best phone call ever. And I was so proud of him. And it's just really great to learn what those specific needs are, and then to be able to celebrate successes with each of those families. Speaking about successes, we've provided additional opportunities for families and parents to meet each other. We've held open office hours so that they can come in and get help with anything that they might have questions on. Jelena will touch on a little bit about how we utilize our interpretation services, but being able to have access to those kinds of tools has really helped us help our families, and we love that. I'm going to talk a little bit about our refugee success coaches. They, like Connie mentioned, they work in our schools to assist students, but also they're a really great connection for us with our teachers, because if there's a question about something that's going on in class, the success coach can work with the teacher and the teacher can work with us, and all of us work together, obviously, to help our students. Some of the things that we've seen from the success coaches help is students' grades have gone up. Some of the kids this year, especially, we found that they are interested in participating in sports. And so we've helped them get registered for that. I'm sure you know, Register My Athlete, there's that whole big process. Well, trying to do that in a language that's not their home language is really hard for them. And so we're trying to break down that barrier to provide these students those kinds of opportunities. We've had students sign up for orchestra, which is really great and exciting. And we've also had students be able to utilize student body officer positions. They're getting voted in as student body officers. And this is just so exciting for us and for their families. And we just love to count up our successes and just keep building on that and providing more opportunities for our family. Jelena?
Awesome. Something that the success coaches also have been able to use because of networking with the Utah Refugee Connection is some incentives for improved grades or accomplishments and things like that. So I just thought of something like, I thought of that when Angie was talking. But yeah, those have been really helpful, and we want to really congratulate them for their successes. We have a 9th grader that's getting a recognition award next week, and that was really exciting for them. So we're very proud of our students and everything that they're doing. And we do know that there are students that are continually going to progress, maybe at a slower pace, but at least they're moving forward, and they know that we care, and they know that we're available to help them. So something that Angie had touched on that she said I was going to mention was utilizing interpreter services. Melissa Skousen is on this call, and she's amazing. She's great at coordinating interpreter services through the school district. At our refugee awareness nights, she's been able to coordinate some really incredible interpreters that have helped our parents and our students feel heard and be able to share their voice at those events, as well as during parent-teacher conferences or meetings with teachers separate from that regarding grades or behavior or attendance. So that's been really helpful for our school district. And then another resource that we're able to use is an on-demand phone interpretation service that for nights like last night where I had to call a parent after 6:30 because that's when they're home from work, I'm able to actually call them and use that service. And it's really helpful for them to communicate their concerns and to have more understanding about programs that we offer. So things like that have been really helpful. And something as simple as Google Translate is something that we use every day. And that has been really helpful as well. So we're definitely grateful for that. And then something I also wanted to touch on that I wrote down is something that's important for us is documenting. Documentation is so important for us to remember what happened at that meeting. How can we document this so the school knows what's going on while keeping their privacy, of course? It's sharing with the schools information that will help them, like I said earlier, to help the students and to be supportive. So that kind of documentation is really helpful, especially if for whatever reason, one of our team members is out of town, or if we're transferring to a new position within our team, things like that are really helpful for us to know who to contact in the family and what dialect or things like that. So I wanted to also touch again about the community awareness nights. Those have been amazing and very successful. This last one we had over 250 people, which was more than we expected. And we were able to have a highlighted speaker from Syria with an interpreter. We were able to have three panelists share their experiences about coming to the US and what it's been like since they've been here, challenges, but also successes that they've experienced. And we were able to have Know Your Neighbor come and share volunteer resources and opportunities for the community. And we had people tabling outside from different organizations as well. So it's a really good opportunity and we recommend it for everyone. We learned that. We didn't steal it, Connie, we learned it from the Utah Refugee Connection, who still does their cultural nights, and they do that even more often because theirs is a nonprofit organization. And I highly recommend attending one of their events, attending one of our events, so that you can see how much community members really want to be involved. There's so much going on in the world right now, as we all know, and people, I think, from what we've seen, they want to be helpful, they want to show support, they want to show love towards their neighbors, and we've been overwhelmed with gratitude from people that want to be volunteers for English class or volunteers at our events, or are willing to walk a mom with a stroller and her little kids all the way across an overpass to their house just so they can get to English class. Things like that have been so helpful. And showing an interest in our families and our students with their culture, their food, their religion, everything that they're interested in, it makes them feel welcome and feel a sense of belonging. And more than anything, that's what we're trying to do. So if there's anything else, Connie, that we haven't touched on, please share. We've loved our job. Some days are extremely hard and we feel like crying. And then other days we are so ecstatic with joy about how the littlest wins are keeping us going and keeping our families going. So that's what we wanted to share. I hope if you have any questions, please ask.
Thanks, Jelena and Angie and Connie. Angie's actually put your contact information in the chat that Bev asked for. So these resources to share are really important. And again, this whole idea of what does welcoming look like and how do we build the capacity of community and neighbors to support families and children. So it's really important. I'm actually going to introduce someone who came on from California. She's a Stanford colleague of mine. We've worked together for a long time. I don't know how long it's been, Shelley, but Shelley Goldman. She and I are, colleagues. We've been colleagues for, Shelley, how long?
15, 20 years, I guess.
15, 20, yeah, 20 years. We're doing historical writing together, and we have a great editor who's a Stanford professor. And so Shelley is, writing some interesting books. We've written books together on design thinking. We've done work on design thinking. Shelley, do you want to say anything about this great group of people, even though I've biased your biased kind of your ideas based on this wonderful group of people that I have the privilege of working with and learning from?
I've just been amazed, everyone, to hear the work that you're doing and the stories you're telling on behalf of new families and families that are hoping to join the community and learn English. I have been working on issues of families and education for a very, very long time, and it's just so refreshing to hear the kind of wins you're having with the efforts you're making and how your whole idea of families and the roles that they play in the process of educating children can be. So it's just very wonderful for me to sit here and hear you all talking about the things that you're doing that are working. I have a lot of
Thanks.
confidence that those can happen more and more and be true and grow. And so it's just wonderful to hear. So thank you, Christelle, for allowing me to join.
Well, thanks for taking time and joining us. Um, most people in the country have no idea the kind of environment that Utah educators create for families. For whatever weird stereotypes that other people in the country have about Utah. But from my experience in working with Utah educators, uh, it's really unbelievable the quality and the commitment they make to children and families, uh, and create community opportunities for neighborhood and community agencies to work together in really innovative ways. So, thank you for joining us, Shelley. It's very exciting to share this with you. When I talk to you about the things that Utah educators are doing, you know, it's secondhand, but when you actually hear it from them, it makes a really significant difference. So thank you again. So the last thing we're going to do, and we're actually ahead of time, and I hope Liliana is here. This is the Utah Voices of Children, and they're going to do a review. So I'm hoping they're here because they were scheduled for 11, but we're ahead of time. So I'm going to see if I don't know. I'm not sure that I see them here.
Christelle, my team is on. This is Michelle. My team is on to share our competency-based endorsement if you want them to do that while we're waiting.
Yeah, that'd be great, Michelle. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Great. We just need to get screen sharing capability with Chelsea James. We'll be sharing a screen, and I think that will be it. But as you all have started and we gleaned some information from you as you started your competency-based endorsement, Jordan District was still going primarily through SUU with the ESL endorsement. And so over the years with research and looking at the best instructional pathways forward for our teachers and the amount that were coming in, we wanted to make sure we were turning this endorsement into a promising practice that one, the board would approve, and two, the teachers would have the buy-in for. We want to make sure that the purpose, as always, is to support and train educators as they work with our multilingual students. And through that, we were able to provide strategies and instruction that was meaningful, personal, and purposeful, so that they had equal access to educational opportunities to reach their academic goals. Of course, through the TESOL standards and strategies and the courses that we had gleaned through SUU, we kept and revitalized and restructured some areas and submitted that. Of course, we were very excited about the final product of the capstone project. So I will turn time over to them. Chelsea, do you have screen sharing at this point? And Krista are going to be.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're just going to start and kind of give you an overview of what we've done. And It took a lot of time, and we're grateful for those of you in other districts because we were able to look at your information. But we put a lot of thought into it, and we realized that what we really needed to focus on was the practicality of it. And so moving away from SUU to competency-based, we wanted to make sure that there was a practical element. So we took the 5 classes, and they're about 7 weeks each, with 2 face-to-face sessions. And so it's about 2 months a course with breaks in our schedule. And we start with a pre-assessment in each course. We go over the content, and then there's a capstone project in each course, and then the monthly meetings.
Yeah, so the pre-assessment that teachers take is based off of the TESOL standards. They do it before the courses and at the end, and they also make goals based off of the TESOL standards, which they align and use for coaching cycles. So we are requiring our participants to do 2 coaching cycles throughout the endorsement. Our endorsement is accelerated. They get it done in a school year, so it is really rigorous, but they get it done a lot quicker. We have been really loving having that coaching cycle part, so that it is practical, it's applicable, and they are engaging in those coaching cycles because every school has an instructional coach on site. And as Krista mentioned, we for each course there's a capstone project which displays some competencies that they put together in a portfolio, and then at the end of finishing the endorsement, we have a night where everyone comes together. We celebrate, but we also let the participants highlight some parts of their portfolio, share their reflections on the whole process, and then we guide them into getting those competencies signed off and with their applications. What I'm going to share is we've been reflecting a lot since this is our first year in what we need to, adapt, what's going well, what we want to change. We have some glows and grows. So Krista, do you want to share what we feel went well?
Yeah, it went well giving the coaching cycles that Chelsea mentioned, because it connected the coaches to be better involved with us, with our MLs, and it connected the coaches to the teachers. And so it kind of made this cohesiveness in our district. We discovered that because we were trying to get everything together and make sure that everything was in line, that teachers were feeling that way too. So what we started doing is we started doing an orientation meeting before the endorsement started. That freed teachers up to ask any questions and to also be aware of what they were getting into and what the expectations were. And that made our last cohort flow so smoothly. So the capstone project, which is the practical, the practical part of it, we wanted to be there to support them. And so we have, fortunately, 5 teacher specialists in our department that we were able to divide up all of the students and really individualize that time. So then we were instructing them, but then the capstone projects along the way, we could help them throughout the whole entire year. One of the fortunate things too is that now we're still working with SUU, so teachers have the option of getting SUU credit if they would still like that graduate level credit, or if they feel that they have enough credit, they can get USBE credit. But because we've been able to align it with those TESOL standards, we've also been able to incorporate the curriculum that we use in our district. And that's been so meaningful because we've made some adaptations in our literacy and math curriculum. And so when we've been able to align that, that's really helped teachers with all of the newness that's coming at them. We've also been we've also heard from teachers that they do like being able to have more time to put things into practical practice in their classrooms rather than meeting weekly. And so that's been able to accommodate their busy schedules.
Yeah. And then just some areas that we still can grow. We have a lot of conversations as a team of what adjustments we need to make, how we can make our program more effective, and just continuing to better align with a competency-based approach. We've made revisions like, pretty because we take on cohorts every fall and every January, and so we are continually updating things. We are going to continue reevaluating our program and the individual courses and making sure that they are effective and aligning with those standards. We are continuing to update our courses, the content and the tasks so that they are aligning with current research and best practice. We want things to stay up to date. And then we make any necessary adaptations based on feedback. And then we want to really continue to uphold clear expectations and communications amongst ourselves as a team and as instructors, but also with our participants. And I do think, kind of going off what Krista said, and I heard Christelle mention it earlier, is being able to do this with the teachers in our district makes us more visible as a department and really helps build connections with a lot of schools and teachers we maybe wouldn't have been able to before. Like I know all of us have been able to go out to more schools based on these connections we make, but also we really can tailor it to their needs in our district. And I think that that's been something we've really been trying to focus on so that it is really meaningful to them and applicable. And that's something we really want to continue to do. And so we ourselves are working to be part of training on any new curriculum. We still collaborate with our math team in teaching and learning, our literacy specialists. And so we try to keep those connections too with teaching and learning so that we really can be as effective as possible in our endorsement, but also in just supporting our teachers. Michelle, would you like to add anything else?
No, I think that's it. We do have our portfolio night, May 22nd at 4:30, at our ASB. So you are invited to come through and talk with the teachers and meet the team and see the outcome of our first year and learn from that. Just send me an email and let me know you're coming so we can make sure we can give you recognition as well. But our team has been working hard. I mean, we kind of started around March of last year planning to start in August as we were revamping. So dedicated team that have been with us prior and current. So really proud of them.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Could you actually send me an invitation so I can mark it on my calendar so I can come?
Absolutely. I will do that right now.
That'd be really great. Michelle and her team, they really helped me in redesigning the monitoring system. And I won't call it a system. I'll actually call it an experience. And so I just want to thank the Jordan team. I learned so much from them and with them when we visited schools. And this makes a difference because it's a model of kind of what everybody has been saying, which is, how do you actually adjust the way in which you're interacting with schools so that the kind of relationship you have is one of trust and respect and has a sense of integrity. And this is something that we have done that actually makes a difference with the way in which people can focus their energy on positive things. Because the goal really is, how do you put your energy? And Priscilla from Weber is also saying, Michelle, can you send me an invitation too? So Michelle, you should send it out to me and then I'll just send it out to people and then I'll copy you so that you can you can see. The other thing that Michelle and their team does so effectively is they have neighborhood gatherings where they have community people come in and provide all these different resources. And now schools, and you have to correct me, Michelle, if I'm saying this incorrectly. Now schools are creating this kind of community and neighborhood experience for, their families and their schools. So
Yes. And what you're speaking to is similar to what Granite does and similar to what Davis had mentioned that they do. Ours is a little different in the sense that with our fall family fair that's in September, it's a kickoff party, so to speak, for the entire Jordan School District. It started off as making sure that we provide resources to our multilingual families and information about what is offered in the district at the beginning of the year so they have resources. And it's turned into something where every department in the district now knows about our fall family fair and puts it on their calendar so that they have a tabling event present, and are able to pass on resources. And it's open to all families. Of course, we target our marginalized populations and our ML families. And what's really amazing is to see the information that's brought out. We have community partners that come out, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, anything within what we call our 5 boroughs of Jordan School District, since we encompass 5, to 6 cities. We want to make sure that that's present. The mayors show up of each city. And, even better, the last 3 years now, we've kind of had a tradition to have our superintendent who's in a band with the Superintendents of Rock. He and his band perform at this event at the beginning of the year. So it's become a community spirit, so to speak. But I think the highlight is making sure that we then get students from different schools in their leadership and can perform. We've had POP and LIA and Majestic Arts Academy perform so that they're highlighted, which we all know also brings families and parents. And then the added element is having our student body officers from each high school signing students in. So it's become a community event. And because of that, like Christelle has said, schools have noticed the need of how that community support is happening. And Aspen, their principal, Susie Williams, is amazing. She not only took our endorsement while she was first year principal of this new school that was being built, but then created her own community night at Aspen Elementary, because in Daybreak, it's so culturally different and hard, and pulled that together. And then other schools have pulled it out and having multicultural nights. And it's just, I think that data for us, even though it's not in numbers, over the last 5 years has shown us the impact of culture and community that our department has had throughout the district. So it's been great, and it's grown and added on to other events and programs that we put together. So thank you, Christelle, for highlighting that.
Well, you're welcome. Do you want to say something about your book clubs, the way in which it's focused in content, so people understand how book studies connect diverse communities in relationship to content?
Sure. And team, step in if I'm omitting and forgetting somebody. In coming in and back to Jordan District 5 years ago, like most districts, everyone is kind of isolated, working in their own silos. And with our multilingual learners, I noticed that, they're everywhere, but people were talking about it separated and isolated. So I was very intentional in collaborating with other departments, so much so that they eventually did pull us out of teaching and learning so that we became our own department, which was a really good success. And so with that, we still maintain those friendships and partnerships with the other departments. I still attend the teaching and learning PLCs twice a month. Chelsea is with the coaching endorsement. I started with the teaching and learning coaching endorsement, so I wanted to make sure MLs were still in it. And so Chelsea is the point person that works with them. Krista has been spotted she was asked to, kind of work with the math department, special ed, and other departments. And then we have Letitia working with credit recovery. So everyone has like a department that they're focalized on. And so then that then sprung up with monthly meetings with our special ed department. And then the math department, we kept trying to reach out to them, and they were starting not starting new curriculum, but we found a book, and I will try to locate it as I'm talking to you. We found a book, multilingual learners, teaching math to multilingual learners, students. And they had actually bought it. And luckily, because we're in their professional development, I'm in teaching and learning all the time. Amy Kinder, the consultant, said, oh, by the way, we bought this book. And I said, oh, can my team have a copy? And then, of course, overextending the invite. And does your team want to do a book study with this? So kind of forcing them to, one, acknowledge that we exist as a department and we have specialists that know what's going on. And two, to also understand what their new curriculum looks like. And with that, we also invited the gifted endorsement and the gifted team into that math book study. And we've done it every month. And we're on our last chapter where family engagement will come in. And so I have my teacher specialists presenting on that next month. And so I'll put the title and author in the chat, but it's been great conversations to push the math department forward. They had an awesome professional development December, and they brought someone in that talked about translanguaging, but then focusing it on math content. So just seeing the interweaving of these departments is great. And working with them has been, you know, no small feat. We're busy, but also our multilingual learners are at the focus in many areas, which is very helpful.
I was sorry. You good?
Chelsea,
I was just going to add on that yeah, with coaching, I'm doing a book study with coaching, but also we have introduced that Title III observation form like to be used in that capacity as well with coaches. And then we've worked with our literacy department in different workshops too. So I think it's been really, and gone to PLCs at schools with teaching and learning. So I think that's also been a good positive thing.
Thanks, Chelsea. And Michelle, for, you know, the way in which Jordan has really responded as, you know, these artificial barriers between, you know, departments ends up being this really kind of isolating, siloed experience. And so, you know, Jordan has done such a great job of eliminating those barriers, which I think is really important to have a sense of, you know, collective efficacy, as Hattie suggests, in relationship to what makes the most difference in achieving academic opportunities for all students. So thanks, Michelle, so much. And also, you know, it's impressive that you have book studies that are focused on content. One of the questions that was continually asked for state agencies around ESSA when it was first authorized was how is the state agency going to ensure that students learning English have access to grade level content? They didn't say, you know, how fast are you going to get kids to learn English? They didn't say that. You know, they actually really focused on quality instruction related to content, related to grade level academic conversation, you know, which I think is really important. So Michelle is asking Connie about the email address. Okay, so this is perfect timing. I know this has been a long meeting, but I try to divide it up so that we're always learning and sharing with each other, other than, you know, just kind of informational. We have our two colleagues from the Utah Voices of Children that are going to, and they have access, you know, obviously to share the review of the legislative session. Before they do that, and I want them to introduce themselves to all of you because I consider them colleagues and friends and advocates in the policy realm. One of the things that's very important is HB 42, which is the EL amendment connected to increased, what shall I say, emergency funding. So I was in the finance department I think it was last month. And there's still a lot of issues related to the board rule. related to, they changed it and they put it in the under the at-risk funding. So there seems to be some kind of general confusion. And I think it's coming up at the next board meeting. The finance department, they had a really minimal quorum. They had like 3 board members there, and the chairperson, I'm not sure, was there. So they're moving it to a whole board meeting to look at the rule, which is making me a little nervous. But I think if we're really clear and supportive, then we can make it a reasonable implementation of HB 42. So Liliana and Syriac, you can introduce yourselves, and you have access to, to providing an overview of the legislation that was passed. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Christelle, and hello, everyone. We see a lot of familiar, friendly faces on here. So nice to see many of you, and just want to take a moment to thank Christelle for all the amazing work that she does. I know you can all agree that her work really makes a difference in our state. So thank you, Christelle, for your time and your efforts. I am going to share my screen to share our presentation. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Just a little introduction to my colleague, Syriac and I. First, my name is Liliana Bolaños, and I'm an immigrant family policy analyst at Voices for Utah Children, and I'll let Syriac introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Syriac Alvarez Valle, and I'm a senior policy analyst at Voices for Utah Children. I work on our healthcare and our immigrant family policies alongside Lily. And I'm going to share a little bit about our team. So Voices for Utah Children, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this September, and we have been working on raising awareness, influencing policy, and uniting our community for the past 40 years. Really what that looks like is translating and understanding data and giving policy recommendations. It's educating policymakers, influencing legislation, and monitoring the different bills that happen throughout the legislative session. And then, of course, creating community engagement events, doing presentations like this to let community know what's going on, and then connecting parents and families to legislators and policymakers that are making decisions on the ground. We have our website and our social media at Utah Children across all platforms, and try to do as much as we can to make things as accessible as possible, because we know that sometimes policy or advocacy can feel like a little bit distant. And so we try our best to really try to hone in on what we do and try to make it as accessible as possible.
In our capacity as policy analysts at Voices for Utah Children, we also have the opportunity to lead out on the Utah Immigrant Advocacy Coalition. You can scan this QR code with your phones that will take you to our website, or just type u-iac.com. As you can see here on our website, we have a number of resources for community members. We have data on immigrants in Utah, number of immigrant children, the number of U.S. citizen children that have at least one immigrant parent, number of immigrant entrepreneurs, how much Utah immigrants contributed in taxes in the most recent tax year. We also have a calendar where we list community events. We also have an Immigrant Family Unity Fund where we're raising funds to help families stay together by supporting them in their legal fees when applying for different immigration statuses. We also have a timeline that goes through federal and Utah-specific immigration changes, as well as community resources. And I'll walk you through our community resource guide really quick. It is a comprehensive resource guide for individuals regardless of immigration status. So we had some wonderful fellows, a student from the University of Utah and a student from BYU that went through and vetted all all these resources in our state to ensure that immigration status would not be a barrier to receiving any of these benefits. So as you can see, we have education, health, employment, legal services, entrepreneurship, mental health, emergency preparedness, and know your rights resources. So for example, if you know a family is in need of legal services or an immigration attorney, you can simply refer them to this website where they can find either no-cost immigration legal services, affordable or sliding scale, and if they need attorneys that specialize in specific areas of immigration law, we've also divided them up here as well. And like I said, these are all vetted and trusted resources within the community. So feel free to take advantage of these resources. We know that being at the front of the lines with our students and families, you may at times feel overwhelmed with the amount of changes going on, and hopefully our website can be a resource for all of you. And our coalition consists of a group of diverse organizations and groups in the state, such as the Utah Immigration Attorney Chapter, different offices within the governor's office, as well as different advocacy and direct services groups. So please feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in participating in this coalition. As educators, you would bring a very valuable voice to this group. We have monthly calls, sometimes in person, sometimes on Zoom, where we talk about federal and local immigration changes and continue to share resources and build up our website.
Awesome. Thank you, Lily. And yeah, we also included the website in the chat if you're interested in checking out the rest of the resources. So now we're going to go through the legislative session. And first, we wanted to kind of go over an overview of what we saw during the session. So Lily and I spent a lot of time up at the Capitol. And so we were able to really just see four really main common themes when it came to immigration legislation this session. There are about 13 bills that we tracked, but we know that there were a few more that we didn't track. But the ones that we did track really focused on increased criminalization, increased enforcement, a narrative of immigrants are burdening our system, and then wanting to increase punishment. And really that mostly revolved around criminal amendments to the justice system, and then some changes to make it harder for immigrants in certain programs. So there is a lot to track, and so we're going to do our best to share the bills that we thought were relevant to this group, but we'll also make sure to share our full legislative recap for our organization, and then the list of bills that we opposed or supported in a short summary.
So we're going to get started by going through some of the House bills that we felt you should all be aware of. The first one is the one that Christelle has already mentioned, which is HB 42, English Learner Amendments. And this is the bill that provides increased funding, $500,000 a year is the cap for English learner programs in the state. So again, qualifications. So the school district has to see an enrollment increase of at least 75% over a 3-year span. And then also they need to prove that there is substantial need within the school district for this funding, and they need to demonstrate a lack of funding. And so as Christelle mentioned, it is still in the works exactly what this will look like and what it will look like in practice. So this is what we have as of right now. And this is a bill that we supported as Voices for Utah Children. Utah ranks almost dead last in per pupil spending in public education. So anything to increase funding for our public schools and our children is very important to us. So this was something that we supported, and luckily it did pass. In the original text, it was more money that was going to be allocated per year, and the threshold, instead of 75%, it was 50%. So they did lower the funding and increase the enrollment increase number. But overall, we do see this as a win for our state, especially for our educators, like many of you, and our students. So this was a good outcome.
So there's a question about, and this is from Kane County, from Robin. it says, do you also have to have at least 30 students to get this funding? So why don't you kind of address that? I'm going to withhold my comments because seems to be lots of confusion around the formula, which I still haven't seen. So do you want to say anything about that, the question?
Yeah, I can jump in. So like the bill itself says 30 or more students above the previous 3-year average enrollment for students learning in the school district. However, I do not see a specific like has to have at least 30 students from the beginning. So Christelle, I don't know if at-risk funding requires the 30 students. Okay, then if not, this is what I would go off of.
Yeah, I think the board rule, because they're still working on it, just from my viewpoint, the whole thing is very confusing because there's not really a transparent calculation. With immigrant funding, there actually is a really clear way in which you have a formula based on a calculation for significant increase, but they didn't take those recommendations as applying. So, I hate to say it, but I think one of the questions ends up being what's going to happen at the next board meeting when it'll go to the whole board, and they're trying to work on the board rule because in the finance committee that didn't happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's a great question. We forgot to mention that we will be doing a Q&A at the end, but feel free to send your questions in the chat. But yeah, thank you. That was a great question. Any other questions about this bill before we proceed? Okay, great.
Awesome. So the next bill is HB 178, Non-Citizen Health Insurance Policy Amendments. This bill was a bill from Representative Walter that would have removed the state chip program. And for those that may not know, the state chip program is a healthcare program that has allowed immigrant students, immigrant children, regardless of their immigration status, to apply for CHIP, and has been really great in helping kids get healthcare. Data that we received from the Department of Health and Human Services shows that 22 out of 29 counties, there are kids using this program in 22 out of 29 counties. And most of the visits, there have been 1,500 wellness visits, 673 immunizations, and a lot of dental services used under this program. And so we know a lot of these kids are really using it for preventative care and helping these kids stay healthy before they have to go to emergency room departments. The program serves approximately 2,000 kids. And again, it has been a really successful program. And so this bill was really heartbreaking to see, but we are glad that the state legislature rejected this and this bill did not pass. It did not come out of the Rules Committee, but we know that the fight will continue as immigration continues to be a debate at the federal level. And for those that work with students or families directly, there is an open enrollment period right now, so kids are able to enroll into the program beginning May 1st, and it's a first come, first serve. So once we hit the cap of approximately 2,000 kids, they'll no longer be able to enroll. But for now, if you know any families that might be eligible or may be wanting to enroll their kids into this program, feel free to send them that website. It also translates to Spanish. So again, this bill did not pass, but we're so still continue to monitor just any worries on this program or healthcare programs in general and immigrant access.
Thanks, Syria.
Sorry, and then the comment, so it starts on May 1st, the open enrollment period, and then we'll go until we reach the cap, which is 2,000 kids.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Another bill that we wanted to bring to your attention was HB 214, Employer Verification Amendments. This is a bill that would have required Utah businesses with 5 employees or more to verify their workers' legal status. Currently, only businesses with over 150 employees must comply with this law. This was a bill that agriculture, construction, and business groups spoke in strong opposition. And this was mainly because the government system in place to verify workers' ability to legally work in the country, the E-Verify system, is very flawed. In fact, even U.S. citizens have a hard time proving that they are able to work legally in this country through that system, which is something that immigration attorneys and employers have reported over the years. And without any significant improvements or efforts to address the issues with the system, it was clear that the burden would be placed on the employers to do this. It's also important to note that Congress has not passed immigration reform in over decades. And so there are many specific industries that struggle with labor shortages and do employ individuals without work authorization. And this is largely due to the fact that this lack of immigration reform has made it so that many are in this country without a pathway to even get a simple work permit. And another thing that's important to note is that when families apply for a legal status in this country, it could take over 20 years to process. And while that family is waiting, they're not granted protection from deportation or a work permit. And the government also doesn't allow them to leave the country while they wait for their cases to process. And so a lot of families stuck waiting for their cases to process without any way to provide for themselves leads to a lot of situations where individuals are working without work authorization. And so agriculture and construction industries, which face significant labor shortages, tend to be the ones that employ them in these settings because they are also desperate for employees and struggle to find U.S. citizens willing and able to do these jobs. And so this really was a Band-Aid solution to a bigger federal problem, which is our immigration system and the lack of legal pathways that exist for people that have been here for many, many years, even decades in many cases. And so without that balance of accessibility and immigration reform, it just was going to directly impact families and businesses to pass legislation like this. For this reason, this was a bill that we strongly opposed. The outcome was it was held in committee twice and never voted on. So it's clear that this was not a priority for the legislature. However, we do anticipate legislation like this coming back, which is also why we're going to talk about bills that didn't pass as well, because we do anticipate they will come back either next session or the following. So it's something that we should all be aware of.
The next bill on our list is HB 226, Criminal Amendments from Representative Perucci. So this bill reverses the 364-day rule for Class A misdemeanor crimes that are offenses against the individuals, except for repelling a bodily substance or material, prohibiting of hazing, and surreptitious administration of certain substances or custodial interference. And then the other thing that it does is that it asks judges to consider undocumented immigrants as high flight risk when they're setting bail, and asks jails to create policies to confirm everyone's immigration status. So the way that it impacts immigrants is that it impacts legal immigrants, because the 364-day rule is a rule that basically allows for immigration judge discretion if someone receives if someone is convicted of a charge of a year or more, they are automatically pushed towards deportation. But that one day could mean that an immigration judge could consider someone's full story and would allow them to stay in the country. Like, for example, if they already paid time for the crime that they committed, and again, just allows the judge to see the whole picture of why this certain crime was committed. And so this bill started off even worse. It I actually also included a piece on nonprofits transporting immigrants as part of the bill and would have reversed the rule for all offenses. But again, this bill only reduces that rule for offenses against individuals that are Class A misdemeanors. So while we're glad it's in a better place, we know that it's still going to impact both legal and undocumented immigrants alike. And this bill will be implemented starting May 7th of this year.
Another bill is HB 284, International Money Transmission Amendments. This is a bill that would have proposed a 2% tax on international money transfers for those without valid government IDs. And the sponsor of this bill mentioned that she believed there were drug lords that were transferring money to other countries from the money that they were making in our state from selling drugs. And so there was an emphasis on this bill only impacting drug lords. However, we know that there are many families in the state that send money to family members in other countries to support them. Some who are parents in the United States that have children back home, and they send them money so that they can have their basic needs met in their home country. And so this bill, we did not have an official position on it, not because it wasn't important, but because, like Syriac mentioned, there were so many immigration bills this session that we did have to pick and choose our battles. And this was one that, although we knew was harmful, we did not have the capacity to fully take a stance on. Luckily, it was not considered in the Senate due to running out of time on the final day of the session. So they voted until midnight on the final day of the session, and this was clearly not a priority because they didn't prioritize getting it on the list. But we do expect to see this bill come back. And with it mentioning that it only impacts people without valid government IDs. So this would exclude driving privilege cards, which we'll talk about next. The driving privilege card. So many of you may be aware, but in the state of Utah, we offer a driving privilege card to certain individuals. This is not a government ID, a valid government ID. So the only thing an individual can do with a driving privilege card is drive a vehicle. They cannot fly domestically with a driving privilege card. They cannot register to vote. They cannot buy alcohol. They cannot buy a gun. This is a very restricted card, and for that, the reason for it is to allow individuals to learn the rules of our road and get insurance because that benefits everyone on the roads. When we increase the amount of educated and insured drivers on our road, it is better for everyone. And so this bill would have allowed law enforcement to impound vehicles and fingerprint individuals caught driving without a license. This is a bill we opposed simply because of an imbalance of enforcement and accessibility. The driving privilege card test is only offered in English, despite data showing that the majority of people who take the driving privilege card do not speak English fluently. This was the legislature's attempt to encourage people to learn English. However, it created a significant barrier to people trying to get their driving privilege card because they would fail the test multiple times, not because they didn't understand the rules of the road or how to drive a vehicle, but because they didn't understand the language in the test. And so that's what led to them failing the test multiple times. And there are many, many community members that have experienced this, and this has been reported by law enforcement. And so to enforce licenses without making them accessible to the community, again, there's an imbalance there that is unfair, which is why we ended up opposing this bill. We felt it would be stronger if they expanded language access for this driving privilege card test. However, it was something that was not politically viable this session, and so it didn't end up being included in this bill. So we did oppose it. However, it is important to note that the legislature is considering having a special session, and we do anticipate driving privilege cards potentially being brought up. So it is important to educate the community that with a driving privilege card, it is not a valid government ID. So it is a very restricted license, and it can only be used for driving a vehicle, nothing else. And so that's something that we want to make sure the community is aware of, in case there's any misinformation around that, such as immigrants registering to vote with a driving privilege card. That is not possible because it's not a valid government ID. Luckily, this bill did fail, but the bill sponsor has stated that he will bring this back next session. Hopefully by then there can be an accessibility piece added, but if not, we will continue to oppose this bill.
Awesome. So the next bills that we're going to go through are a few of the Senate bills that happened during the session. The first one is a refugee service amendments. This bill codifies the Refugee Services Office into law and establishes it within the Department of Workforce Services. The original office was established as a executive order from Governor Herbert, and so this bill finally puts it into code, which is really awesome, a small win for our refugee community. And then the next bill is SB 90, mandatory jail sentence amendments. This bill adds mandatory jail time for individuals who are convicted of re-entry after deportation, have a prior criminal violation, and then face new charges. And so they would have to face mandatory jail sentences for Class A misdemeanors and felonies. They have to serve 360 days in jail. Class B misdemeanors have to serve 180 days in jail. And then Class C misdemeanors, they have to serve 90 days in jail. This bill started off really bad, where it would have added a penalty enhancement for anybody who was undocumented and would serve time in jail. And then instead, after many changes, turned into this bill. And so we did not have an official position at Voices for Utah Children, but this bill did pass, and again, is in a lot better place than it started.
Great. Before we get to Q&A, I just want to share that we really appreciate this time to be able to share this legislation with you all, especially as educators and people on the ground with working with immigrant children and families. It is so important for you to be aware of what the legislature is saying and doing, and the potential impact to your different school districts. If you want to get involved, feel free to scan these QR codes to subscribe to our newsletters. On the left is the Voices for Utah Children newsletter, where we share specific information regarding legislation to children, not just immigration related, but we also have policy analysts that specialize in taxes and budgets, childcare, early education, etc. So feel free to subscribe to our newsletter if that's something you're interested in. And for immigration specific information, subscribe to the Utah Immigrant Advocacy Coalition newsletter. Another way you can be involved is by following us on Instagram. Again, on the left is Voices for Utah Children, and on the right is the Utah Immigrant Advocacy Coalition. Syriac and I have been posting videos throughout the legislative session to update the community on these different bills, and we posted a recap video as well. So feel free to share those with community members as well. And with that, we will conclude our presentation and open for any questions.
Thanks so much, Liliana and Syriac. Our collaboration has really been important. So do you want to close off your PowerPoint so we can see more people? Great. Okay, so if anybody has questions for Liliana Syriac, um, please, raise your hand or unmute. To work with community agencies and organizations that are following the state legislature is really important. And I think sometimes we don't get that information unless we have those relationships with community organizations. So I would really encourage you to contact both of them, make sure that you register for their newsletters. And, this is about creating an entire state where advocacy for children and their families, you know, um, is a value, is what we actually value. Um, because the people on this call, I have the privilege of working with, and they're committed to all the children of Utah. They're our children. They're not somebody else's children. So does anybody have any other questions before we finish the meeting? Thank you for putting your contact information in the system. I really appreciate it in the chat. So the other thing is, we really don't know what's going to happen with federal funding. We don't know about if the Department of Education will be eliminated. It has to have an act of Congress, but apparently, constitutional law doesn't matter anymore uh, to some people, and to some people it does. So I just want to thank all of you. It's a profound privilege for me to uh, not only know you, but respect the work that you do. So I'll say goodbye to everybody. I'm not going to say it's for the last time, but you never know. And what we'll do is I'll stay on. People are saying thank you, and I really think the work that you're doing is incredible. Um, and I'm still trying to release some funding so we can do some more innovative work with state funds because we don't really have federal funds. And the biggest thing, is to make sure that you're meeting with your business administrators and getting those reimbursements done every quarter. Because the only way USBE can validate that those funds are there uh, is if, you know, um, your business administrators are really focusing on submitting reimbursements so that USBE can, draw down the funds from the United States Treasury because they're in the Treasury, they're not in Utah. They're not in the Utah grant system. You all have to do that and take your part in making sure that being able to draw down those funds are going to support the work that you do with children. So again, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and just stay on for informal office hours.